My name is Yuki Nishida. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm a second generation and I identify as Japanese Filipino.
Hi, I'm Faye, also known as Jenny. I use she, her pronoun, and I'm an international student, and I'm Chinese.
My name is Rashana Homa. I use pronouns she, her, and I'm a second generation. I identify as half Sri Lankan and half Japanese.
Hi, my name is Thomas. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am a fourth generation and I identify as Japanese American, Italian American, and French Canadian.
Hi, I'm Paul. I go by he, him, his pronouns. I consider myself 1.5 part of the 1.5 generation, and I identify as a Chinese Korean.
Hi, my name is Shyam. I go by he, him, his pronouns. I'm second generation and I identify as Indian American.
My name is Kelsey Nakasone. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I am fourth generation and I am Japanese American.
Hi, I'm Jackie. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I identify as a first generation Vietnamese American.
I have a favorite food from my culture.
I think similar for me, my favorite is called pav bhaji. It's actually, I'm South Indian, but it's a North Indian dish. And it's sort of just like slaw and like bread, like vegetable slaw. And it's very much like comfort food. It's like warm, like toasty.
I guess jumping on ship with all the comfort food. One of my favorites is called hupyu, which is kind of like a food similar to yuki where you have it when you're sick or not feeling good. It's just like a nice warm dish that kind of feeds the soul in a sense. And kind of similar to Thomas, it's really easy to make, but I can never make it like my mom. It's just something's always missing, and so it's nice to go back home and just get it.
For me, my family eats a lot of Hawaiian barbecue, so I really love chicken katsu. And spin musubi. That really reminds me of home a lot.
I grew up around people who look like me.
Yeah, so I had a lot of experiences growing up where I was surrounded by the Indian community because my parents made it a very big priority. So they always made sure that I went to Sunday school, learned about Hinduism, just generally my culture, going to temple whenever there were religious festivals. So I was sort of separated in two facets of my life where I would see a lot of white people or mostly just Americans at school, and then I would go and see a lot of Indian immigrants over the weekends or for various holidays. So I was always seeing both kinds of people.
I guess it's a little different for me because the only white people I've ever encountered are people that are not within my own race were teachers I've had in school, and I was every day I was just surrounded by people who were of the same ethnicity, the same race as me. And when I came to the mainland United States for the first time, it was a little bit jarring for me to see the ratio of people that look like me versus people who don't, kind of shocking a little bit. Yeah.
So for me, growing up, I only knew one other person who was biracial, and they weren't, being biracial. And the funny thing about biracial kids a lot is that if you have a sibling, they can look very differently from you, and I think that I look very different from my sister. So even growing up, I didn't even think I had someone who looked like me in my family, which is pretty weird. So I grew up near a Japanese community, but even then, I don't feel like I look like them, in terms of some things like that. So it was pretty hard to find people who look like me. There are people who sort of did, but not until high school did I even anyone remotely similar to that, in terms of being biracial, did I find anyone who looked like me.
So I was surrounded by my Sri Lankan community and Japanese community, and they're totally different spheres within my life. So it was very hard for me to fit into each of them because I didn't look like any of the members in each of them, but I did feel like I was a member. It's just that it was very hard for me to feel 100% membership in both of them. So yeah, that's sort of my experience with that.
I feel deeply connected to my culture.
I mean, I guess for me, it's just because even though I didn't necessarily grow up in a community with other Asians, it's just because my parents had such a big influence in my life. So my dad would always take me to meet up with different Korean friends that he had around Texas, and my mom would also talk to her friends about her Chinese friends. So then because of that, I did experience a lot of both Korean and Chinese culture, and I did still have experience. I still have memories of myself growing up in South Korea as well. So with that, I also was able to pick up the Korean language. I wish I could have picked up the Chinese language too, except I was way too young for that. But throughout all of these experiences and through my other experiences in middle school and high school, I was able to connect a lot with both of my Korean and Chinese cultures.
Yeah, like related to like getting to know your cultural background and like your heritage and where you come from. I didn't start out like speaking Japanese. Like it was very hard for my dad to teach us Japanese, only because it was hard to communicate with that language. It was mainly through English within my family. But I sort of took it upon myself to learn the language, so I started going to Japanese school every Saturday in high school. And I actually went into a Japanese minor going into college because I really felt like I was building a connection to that aspect of my culture. And I think throughout that experience, I was able to really like understand and get a good idea of like where I'm come from in terms of.
So me, I said that I don't feel that connected to my culture, mainly because I'm fourth generation, and I feel like being Japanese American, not speaking the language, I've never been to Japan. Like all these sorts of things add up and made me feel like I was always an outsider looking in. I feel like whenever people come back from Japan or I meet people who have lived there, they always talk to me like I should know certain things, or I should be familiar with anime or manga, that sort of stuff. And I never was into that. It just didn't click for me. And my parents made sure that I was proud of being Japanese American and my heritage, which I am. I just have never felt super connected to it because I felt more Japanese American than Japanese, and I was always just surrounded by a very American community, and I think growing up I just related to that more because that was just more of my upbringing, my background.
I have been asked, where are you from?
Yeah.
So I was born in the States, like very much like born and raised in Boston, haven't ever like lived anywhere that's not Boston. So every time someone asks that for me and I'll say I'm from Boston, they don't accept it as like the full answer, and they always want to know, like what they really want to know is like what's your ethnicity, or like where are your parents from. But even then, it's not like my parents are from India, but also like if I explain that, there can be like even more questions, like what part of India, like, and it's just like it's a rabbit hole you don't want to go down. And especially in some environments, like my friends can ask that to me, and it's like kind of a different thing if there's context, but then it's like my boss is asking that to me, and I can't like say no to my boss because there's like different power dynamics that have to play. So I still have to go through a conversation that I don't necessarily just want to like have to live through. So
I guess for me, I kind of take the question differently, as sort of like where I am actually from, because that question in itself and explaining where I'm from, because not many people, because I'm from Saipan, Northern Mariana Islands, like a U.S. territory, and not many people know that, and sort of I get into this whole rabbit hole of explaining what Saipan is, what the Northern Mariana Islands is, what a U.S. territory is, and sort of the whole colonial history of Saipan. So sort of like the question of where you're really from, meaning like what your ethnicity is, doesn't really cross my mind, because I've sort of like practiced the whole speech of where are you from, explaining where Saipan is ever since like middle school, and it's sort of interesting to see like the different like interpretations of like this specific question.
So it's kind of different for me because I'm actually international, and where you're from question kind of like also like put me feel like I don't belong here in a way. They kind of just want to know ethnicity, and it's weird because I also reply with I'm from Ghana, and then they like, first of all, they don't know where that country is. I have to explain where that is. It's part of Africa, and Africa is not a country, and then I have to go into the depth of why I moved there, and then so like I kind of just, with people who I kind of don't want to explain that, I kind of just tell them now that like I'm from Shanghai, so they know it's like they get the answer they want, but it really is a rabbit hole, and I don't want to jump into it.
I am proud of my culture / heritage.
Back then, I feel like I wouldn't have been as proud as I am today, and it was mostly because of my upbringing. Like being in the suburbs, like outside of Boston, I wasn't really surrounded by a community that looked like me, like talked like me, or had any sort of like resemblance to who I am as a Vietnamese American. And that led to, of course, bullying and like being the odd one out, just being kind of like on the outside. And so much of my elementary and middle school life was just like, oh, I wish I could not be it, and just like kind of fit in and like blend in with my surroundings and kind of like go with the flow and not have to be such like a kind of like stick out like a sore thumb kind of feel. But it's nice to, as I went to college, like, and like being in this community, like, and being able to like relate to so many more people, I feel like I've been blessed to have such a diverse and amazing culture that like I'm able to share with everyone and be very appreciative and like very proud of, because like a lot of my friends don't really have like a culture to really call their own.
I love being Japanese, I love being Filipino, I love being Japanese Filipino, and also sort of like growing up as like a third culture kid living in the US territory with Pacific Islander culture that's not my culture, and sort of like being immersed in that and sort of sharing my experiences growing up, getting the best of both worlds, and just really like being proud, like, hey, yeah, that's who I am.
I've just come to love my culture and just sharing about it just because I think it's really cool and awesome, and like just to help like other people to also know about my culture, like as a Chinese Korean. I mean, on one hand, I think it is low-key bragging, but on the other hand, I don't really mind because like your culture is, your background is something that you can be really proud of, and something that you can, and you know, if you want to, you can share to other people.
I can communicate fully with my family / extended family.
Yeah, from what I know, most of my family, all of my family that's in America, whether it's my Italian, French, Japanese side, they all speak English because I'm a fourth gen also. So they didn't really grow up learning the language either. And even like my grandparents on all those sides knew English. Most of our extended family, I guess, we don't have much communications with either. So my sister, I think, went to visit them though when she was in Japan, and she lived with them. So she didn't speak any Japanese. So I'm assuming they speak English.
I don't know. I'm like all over the place because I have family on my mom's side and they speak Sinhala, but they can also speak English. But there will be some like people who just don't know how to speak English, and I won't be able to communicate them without the help of my mom. So it's really hard to sort of connect back to that aspect. In terms of my dad's side, I do know, like, I have general understanding of Japanese, and like I can understand a lot more than I can like speak. So like the input is there, but the output is still like a bit weak on my side. So yeah, there's a lot of communication barriers between my extended family, but I feel like it's slowly getting to the point where like it's been that way for a while, and we sort of make do with it, whether it be like speaking very like broken English or having like translators sort of facilitating between, but yeah.
I feel comfortable talking to my family about serious issues like politics, mental health, sexuality, racism, etc.
So for me, my parents grew up in LA, and they're both public educators, so they're pretty liberal, and they share very similar values that I do. I did a program in high school called Youth in Government where we did like mock California government, and I think both of them were very supportive of it, and they wanted me to learn more about the political system, wanted me to learn more and form my own opinions about a lot of different issues and understand, because I think growing up I saw the world as black and white, and then as you get older you realize there's just a lot of gray area, and there's a lot of places where you can form your own opinions and it's not always going to be right or wrong, and I feel really comfortable having those conversations with my parents because they're very open to hearing from me. I think I'm more open to talking with my dad because I live with him, and we just talk a lot about politics together. He's told me before, both my parents, I have multiple gay aunts, and both my parents have told me, they're like, you love who you love, like I don't care. And yeah, so they're pretty open, it's easy to talk to them, which is really nice and good to have that support.
It's definitely hard talking to my parents about these kinds of things, especially since because of like some language barriers, it's also like that they can't really understand what I'm saying, I can't really understand what they're saying, and because we do have like a generation gap, like they grew up in China, Korea. I basically grew up here in the U.S., so we do have our different values, and I just think like it's just something that we don't really talk about like on the dinner table, just because it would just lead to like a lot of confusions, and I think just some frustrations about like how one side can't see the other side, so it's just something that I avoid talking about.
I got to know someone better today.
Yeah.
They're all friends now. Well, there are a couple of you that I didn't know today, so this was nice to actually like get to hear your experiences, because I like definitely like I just haven't had exposure to a lot of the things that you were saying, just about your identities and like your family. So thank you for sharing. I learned a lot.
I really liked it. I like hearing from everyone's stories and sort of like their upbringing, and sort of college is sort of the time where we really get to know more about ourselves and like be ourselves and learn and like try to come to terms and like really form our identity. And it really takes a lot for all of us to be able to do this in front of a camera. And I applaud everyone's courage.
I think it's nice that we have this opportunity to find ourselves through others.